going a little further into ideas about composition. Um, we did mention in the first video that overlapping is good. So let's compare these two pictures, not this one here, but these other two. This one has all the shapes just right across from each other. At least there's some that are further up and further back, but none of them overlap each other. This one has a lot more going on, plus a lot of shapes overlapping each other. The more stuff that you have overlapping each other, the better. That's going to automatically create a foreground, middle ground, and background. So this hill thing here with the path is in the front foreground because it looks closest, is lowest in the picture. This part of the land with the path is being overlapped by the first one, so it looks like it's further behind. Plus, it's smaller. That helps it look further back as well. And then we've got all these shapes, and who knows what they are, but whatever these shapes are in the back, and they're overlapping each other. And then you can see some cloud shapes even behind that. So here we've got the foreground, we've got the middle ground, which also includes some of these shapes. Background in this case is the sky with all these clouds. So foreground, middle ground, background. You want to try to create that in most artwork that you make. All right, one thing to avoid, it's called tangents. That's just a fancy word for any place where two shapes just touch each other. So you see how these triangles are just getting close to touching these other objects. And this square here is almost at that horizon line. Try to avoid that. Try to have, if this shape is in the back, then let it go behind this shape. Let that just go right behind it so they one overlaps the other. Same with this. This one looks closer because it's bigger. Maybe that could be dropped down here so it goes below the horizon line so it looks like it's in front a little bit more. And then this horizontal top edge of the square goes right in line with the horizon line. If that was at a slightly different angle, or at least if it was not so close to that horizon line, this would look a lot better. Either drop this whole square down a bit or pull it up higher, or even better, have it at a different angle. Then these are doing the same thing. This little astronaut looking guy looks like a guy from Daft Punk or something. That's the most interesting thing in this composition. So make this bigger, make it overlap some of these other shapes. So again, what we want to avoid, put an X through that, anything where two of the main objects in your picture are just almost touching each other, just try to avoid that. Either let one shape overlap the other or the other way around. Make some things bigger so that they overlap, especially whatever is the main focal area. There's a few images to think about as well for composition. Whatever you want to focus on, like in this case, the family, the bridge, the light post thing here, draw or paint those in a way that makes them more clear. And whatever is not as important, such as what's in the background here, you're going to make that more blurry or have less contrast, less detail. This one, you can decide what you think the focal area is or the area that is the most important details. But this bright shape, because it's so much lighter, stands out. It makes this composition have a focal area of this, which catches the viewer's eyes. And then the way it kind of curves down, the ramp angles down towards these people. So maybe your eyes get caught on here when you look at this for the first time, then that's going to make your eyes move down, down again to the more important part, which are the people. In this case, maybe the most important area is in the center with all these people. You might notice that first, and then all these lines angled up. So it makes your eyes move up, 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 up. And that's good. Anytime you can make somebody's eyes move around in any direction, then you have a pretty good composition. Here are a couple images that will use the rule of thirds. So that's essentially dividing the picture into thirds in both directions, which this next image will show. So when we do that, it creates these intersections. Okay, 4 intersections on each picture where those lines cross. And those are places where I want you to try to put your most important subject matter. Most important things that you want to emphasize should be close to one of those 4 intersections. And so you can see in this case how the most important thing was placed here on this upper left intersection. In this case, let's go back actually, see the person here. It's kind of small. You might think that this is the most important part of the picture, and it is important, but the artist really wants you to focus on this person, and that's why the artist chose to place that person right in that rule of thirds intersection in the lower right. That's good composition. Now this person could be here, standing in the center. That would make the person and this more interesting lit up area easier to see, but it would be less interesting in terms of composition. So now we've got the person here and whatever all this junk is angled from each other instead of right on top of each other, which again will make your eyes move back and forth from one to the other. Remember, eye movement, when the viewer looks at a picture, that's always a good thing. And one more thing to talk about is using lines. So I want you to think about, before I show you the next picture, which of these 3 pictures do you think is the most interesting in terms of composition? This one has a lot of very vertical and kind of not quite horizontal, but just a lot of straight lines, especially vertical lines. This has a lot of straight lines, but they're not vertical. They're angled. They're diagonal. This one has a lot of curvy lines. All right, think about what those types of lines, straight, angled, or curvy, how do those make you feel about each picture? Which one's the most interesting? So this highlights those lines I was talking about. In my opinion, these second 2 compositions are the most interesting. I would probably go for this middle one because it's just a really cool view. This is a nice image as well, but just kind of more boring to look at. This one that has all the curves gives more of a calming feel to the viewer, while these other 2 might give a more tense feel. And that's not a bad thing necessarily. It's okay for a viewer to have a tense reaction to an artwork, but it just gives it a different feel. When you create your own composition, I want you to think about that. Do you want the viewer to feel more calm and relaxed, or more tense? Think about the angles too. This one, not bad, but it's just kind of more boring in terms of composition. This one, because of all the angles and the diagonal lines and edges, is more interesting. And definitely with the curves, that makes it more interesting. So let's go back through those real quick. To make your own composition, definitely use a lot of overlapping. Create a foreground, middle ground, background. Try to avoid tangents or places where 2 objects just barely touch each other but don't cross over or overlap each other. Avoid those. Try to think about what you want to have in focus, or what is in focus that leads your eyes towards the most important part. Use the rule of thirds to create a focal area, or a place that is a little bit more dominant in your picture. And lastly, think about how the lines, edges, and shapes in your composition will make the viewer feel and how they will look at the picture.